Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome. That, as they say, is that. Marvel Comics. Let's go ahead and get started. It is Tuesday, all you mentees. That means it's time to take an advanced look at all of the collected editions coming out from Marvel Comics this week. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Before going any further, a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of all of these collected editions coming out this week. And we're looking at the week of March 11th or 12th, depending on where you get your books. We've got a new modern era epic collection and the beginning of the new era of X-Men in collected editions, and that is From the Ashes. We have a reprint of an X-Men event, and then 2 new Saga books. So before we go any further, please don't forget to smash that like button. That goes a long way for us here on the channel. Small thing you can do, but it does mean the world to us. All right, as always, I'll put timestamps in the description of the video so you can jump around in case you're just interested in 1 or 2 books, or in case you don't want any kind of spoilers. I completely understand and respect that. All right, let's go ahead and start this week. Let's do some X-Men stuff. Let's go ahead and start with NYX. All right, so NYX Volume 1, What Comes Next Will Be Marvelous, is the book we're kicking it off with, and this also kicks off the whole From the Ashes era of X-Men. What Comes Next Will Be Marvelous, and here are your credits: Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. Pencilers are Francisco Mortarino and Enid Balam, and then your inkers. Also joining both of them is Elizabeth D'Amico, and then your lettering by Joe Sabino and colors by Raul Angulo. Now, this collects the first 5 issues of NYX. The book has 128 pages and retails for $17.99. And I have heard that the series, is coming to an end with issue number 8. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something I just heard recently. This, X Factor, and I believe X-Force. Now, the premise behind this, by the way, I thought, when I first glanced at the book when we were soliciting it, I thought it was Artie and Leach, and I'm like, oh, Artie and Leach! No, I'm not that lucky. But they have been around for a while now. But that is Anole and, of course, Prodigy, or Professor David Alien. Now, this story primarily focuses on the character of Kamala Khan. So, going as Miss Marvel, the whole world doesn't know that she's a mutant. Only the people from Krakoa know that she's a mutant. So the survivors of Krakoa realize that she's a mutant, and they kind of want to invite her in. And she refuses to let the world know that she's a mutant because there are some things changing. It was interesting to read this as the very first From the Ashes, because it's setting up the new status quo of X-Men. You're used to what was happening in Krakoa, and now mutants are again in hiding. There's this whole turmoil going on between them and the Purifiers, and now Purifiers are turning into something called the Truth Seekers. But long story short, she is going to school. One of the school teachers is none other than Professor David Alien. And then, of course, this is Prodigy, somebody that has been part of the X-Men. Oh my gosh, it's been a while now. It's crazy that he's not a new character, a new mutant, if you will. And then you have Sophie. Sophie Cuckoo, who is one of the Cuckoo sisters. And she is becoming friends with her. They go to a nightclub where they run into Anole. And this is Vic, who doesn't really want to be a superhero, doesn't want to be... he doesn't want the spotlight of being in the X-Men. Like, he didn't want that kind of life. He just wants to be a bartender. So again, these are characters that have known each other for a while, and then having to deal with Kamala Khan here as the new mutant, if you will. Now, what is happening through these pages is, oh, and we also have Wolverine. This is, of course, Laura Kinney. So you've got the main characters are Sophie Cuckoo, and you have Prodigy, you've got Laura Kinney, Wolverine, Anole, and then also Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. There's a new villain that's going around here, going by the name the Krakoan. And the Krakoan is just tearing things up left and right. And Kamala has her doubts that the Krakoan is really who he says he is, and that she's trying to figure out, she knows his power. She knows, like, the thing about Kamala is that she is a fangirl, right? Like she loves and breathes superheroes. So it's like she would have these trading cards. There's something awesome that the Krakoan says through here, and I was like, well, should I reveal this or not to kind of give you an idea of what the dialogue is like? I'll tell you what it is here in a little bit. Now, the Krakoan is working for somebody else, though. And what this somebody else wants to do is separate mutants from humans. They don't want these people to coexist. They've tried that and failed because of Krakoa. So they want them at each other's throats, if you will. And that's what the kids have figured out, so they kind of want to put a stop to it. And I say kind of because not all of them are on board with the idea of having these threats pop up throughout the city of New York, and that's why it's called NYX. And putting a stop to it, because a couple of these kids believe that, well, maybe we should be separated, right? It didn't work out with Krakoa. A couple of them go undercover, like Laura here with this character named Local, to try to figure out who he's working for, and that is revealed a little bit later. And then we have also this whole inner turmoil with the family, like Kamala's family that doesn't agree with her, like Amir. And another character that was introduced in the earlier pages. So you see them actually joining the Truth Seekers, and it becomes this whole thing like, well, maybe I'm wrong. You see the return of the Morlocks, but they do take an interesting turn. And I wanted to show just one more yes right here. So this is a Krakoan, obviously channeling the inner Magneto, but also says, welcome to die. Now, of course, if you're a fan of the arcade, the 6-player arcade, that's the Magneto's welcome to die, right? And she's like, wow, that's a deep cut. And Sophie's like, I don't get it. Anyway, it's that kind of dialogue you're going to be seeing through here, a lot of pop culture, but also a lot of new terminology that's being used by the youth. I hate using that term, but it's the truth. I mean, it's to the they are, right? Like my kids and their friends, some of the things that they say. Not as annoyingly as like skibbity toilet, nothing ridiculous like that, but there is some new terminology being used through here that I was like, oh, yeah, wow, that's so weird. But then again, it must be weird for somebody that's young today, like a teenager reading stuff from the 70s and 80s, because we no longer use terminology like that. All right, 5 issues collected in here, and that kind of sets up exactly what's going on. Are mutants and humans going to coexist, or are we forever to remain divided? Here are your variant covers all the way in the back, supplied by different folks. 128 pages, and also an ad for the Phoenix right here. And $17.99. Rated T+. X-Men by Jed MacKay, Volume 1, Homecoming. All right, we read NYX, or at least I read NYX first. That's the way I did it. I'm not sure how these titles came out when they were coming out in single issues, but I did read that one first. One of the things that my buddy Curtis immediately noticed about these whenever I put a video up, no, I took a picture of these when they came in, was the trade dress, and he was like, oh, it is very reminiscent to the Jim Lee trading cards of X-Men from the 90s, and I didn't even catch that. So, man, good eye, my brother. Good eye. And yeah, so they stand out. This era stands out just like Krakoa did. All right, so this is collecting the first 6 issues of this ongoing series, 176 pages, $19.99. And this is primarily the team that you're going to be seeing through here. Ryan Stegman doing a lot of the artwork here. Jed MacKay writing it, but also Netho Diaz coming in for some fill-in issues. J.P. Mayer taking the top billing for inking. Marte Gracia for coloring. And Clayton Cowles for lettering. And you do have variant covers, just like you did in the NYX. I forgot to mention that. Sometimes on the opposite side of the ongoing or the regular cover. So yes, the team primarily is filled with Cyclops leading them, Beast kind of being like his right-hand man, Magneto in a chair, what's that about? Psylocke, Kid Omega, Temper, Magic, and the Juggernaut. These are characters that have been well established, some of them all the way from the 60s, some of them just about 10, 15 years ago. And some of them from, it's weird to think like Morrison's era was 20 years ago, and it just kind of drives me crazy how fast times like that. Time is a thief, my friends. Time is a thief. All right, so this is the book that really kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. While NYX hinted that mutants and humans are no longer getting along, and that now mutants are in hiding again. This kind of establishes some of the reasons as to why, and I don't want to really reveal too much. I do love the way that Stegman, like, it's almost like he's channeling Dave Cockrum's Beast. I love that. So, first order of business, rescue Wolverine. He is being kidnapped by a group of purifiers and people from Orcus. And the premise of this book is different than the NYX. This one is about going into hiding, going into the Sentinel base all the way up in Alaska and learning to live and coexist with some of the humans. And of course, a lot of the humans don't trust these mutants. And yes, I meant that. Like, the first order of business is go and rescue Wolverine. Now, Wolverine will be in the pages of Uncanny X-Men. But the difference here is that there are humans that are being activated and turning into mutants. So somebody is activating their X gene, and the more you read, the more you find out how exactly that's happening and why that's happening. Now, when the book was originally published in single issues, there was a digital page that was only available digitally that you had to scan the QR code. That has been printed here. By the way, this metallic sentinel will be explained within these pages here. Yes, this page, I believe, this little preview of what is to come or who some of these villains will be, was only available digitally. So rest assured it is here in the trade paperback. But this reveals kind of the new nemesis, the antagonist of the stories in here. You have the Fourth School, and then you have the 3K, or the 3000. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. So you have the Zealot, the Doctor, the Means, and the Chairman. Now, you do find out, or maybe you find out, who the Zealot is through these pages. But you can find out for yourself who they hint at the Zealot being. So Cyclops is leading this new team, unsure of himself. He throws a couple of hints about where the status quo of his wife might be. He throws a couple of hints as to where some of the X-Men have gone. One of the biggest changes, though, is, for me at least, was the characterization of the Juggernaut. I feel like he was acting a little more like his older self in here. From the pages of, I can't believe I'm going to compare it to this, the Malibu Exiles, if anybody ever read that version of Juggernaut. So I don't know if something's going on with him or not. Now, there are meetings between humans and mutants. Now, we are in Alaska, so they're not that, there's not that many humans living here. And it seems like the government is stepping in. One is stepping in from time to time. And the whole thing about Magneto and why he's in a chair really brings up an interesting point, because it goes back to the resurrection protocols of Krakoa. What happens if you were resurrected so many times? Does it affect your body? Does your body start breaking down? Do you start losing your powers? A lot of questions are asked, and that are I thought were really interesting, and I'm like, okay, is that where we're going to go with this? Or mutants going to start losing their powers? And who is activating these humans and turning them into mutants? I do like the character of Temper through here, but I really enjoyed her character in the Sabretooth and the Exiles. We do see the return of classic villains as the Upstarts. So it's always nice to see them. At least for me, I really enjoy those characters. We have this whole connection between... now, this is Quanon, not Betsy, but Psylocke and Grey Crow here. And then, of course, who is behind pulling all these strings? Who is activating these mutants? This was actually, I really like this issue. My favorite issue in here, though, has to be issue number 7. Oh, I'm sorry. So this does collect the first 7 issues, not the first 6 issues. And the retail price is $19.99. This is Cyclops drinking a beer with Magneto. And I love the reaction here that he's like, Magneto's kind of calling him out. Like, this is in the past, right? This is kind of what sets up the X-Men team. That he's just lost up here in a cabin in Alaska and just drinking a beer. And Cyclops' reaction is so ridiculous. He's like, what? Wolverine gets away with it. Why can't I? Anyway, it's an awesome team up between both of these characters, and I really feel like MACKAY gets that chemistry. Now, this is, of course, a flashback because this is before Magneto was in his chair, and this is when we meet perhaps another mutant that is living in this little town in Alaska, and this is the whole fight against that Sentinel that you saw frozen and how exactly it got frozen. But I will let you find out how that happens. Let's look at the extras. So you do have like this kind of hello introducing themselves, whether it's Jed McKay or Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. And then, of course, the variant covers here. Tony S. Danielle right there. Didn't expect that one. Tarun Clark. Some of these are awesome. You know, I wasn't sold on Cyclops, like his outfit, but actually seeing Ryan Stegman draw him in action sequences, dude, he is so kick-ass. Actually, Cyclops is pretty badass through here, so if you're a Cyclops fan or Magneto fan, I think you will really dig this series right here. 176 pages collecting the first 7 issues of X-Men and retailing for $19.99. All right, we got some new Saga books. Today, we're going to be looking at the Thunderbolts, the Saga of Winter Soldier. And these are big, thick books. They're not epic collections. But, I mean, seriously, they are just as thick, some of them. And some of them are thicker than epic collections. But they collect just about the most important stories that the editors think need to be included in a collection for you to better understand the character. We'll be looking at the Yelena Belova soon. But this is the Winter Soldier. Now, spoilers if you don't know who the Winter Soldier is, in case there's one or two of you that just started reading comics and you're like, who is it? All right, just in case. But they kind of, I think they do tell you in the back, actually, so... Bucky Barnes, created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. So it is broken down by different story arcs in here. Of course, Ed Brubaker creating the idea of the Winter Soldier. And then you have Winter Soldier, Bitter March, and Winter Soldier, the series from 2018 by Kyle Higgins. So you have Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting, Michael Lark, Rick Remender, Roland Boschi, and then Kyle Higgins and Rod Reyes. So collected in here is Captain America from 2004, 6, 8, through 9, 11 through 14. Winter Soldier to Bitter March 1 through 5. And then Winter Soldier to 2018 series 1 through 5. The book has 392 pages and retails for $39.99. Now, the Captain America issues in here have been collected in the Ed Brubaker Omnis. As a matter of fact, it's the very first omnibus. The Winter Soldier to Bitter March 1 through 5 has been collected in the Rick Remender Captain America Omnibus. The Winter Soldier from 2018 has not been collected in a oversized format. So it is collected in a trade paperback, and it is also collected in here. Now, the idea of the Winter Soldiers, we have a new assassin that is targeting several important people, including friends of Captain America. And as it turns out, the Winter Soldier is none other than his sidekick from the Golden Age, from World War II, Bucky Barnes. But how is Bucky still alive? Well, these issues of Captain America will reveal exactly how Bucky lived and how he became an assassin for the Russian government and what he's been up to all these years since he hasn't caught up with Captain America. How he was able to forget and how they were able to program him to just be the perfect assassin. And it does... I mean, it is a very freaking compelling story. And if you've never read The Winter Soldier, man, you're in for a treat as far as the twists and turns and where it's going to go. Bitter March happens a few years later when it was Rick Remender writing the stories in Captain America. But it is all set in 1966, so it was before he came, before Bucky revealed himself to Captain America, that, hey, I am Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier is Bucky Barnes. And this is really a awesome story that stars not just the Winter Soldier, but also a couple of other characters that you might be familiar with, and some new characters. There's a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative named Ren Shen, who kind of plays the big role through here. So it's kind of like Bucky and at least this story here, it's kind of like the Bucky and Ren show. Nick Fury is also along for the ride while Captain America is asleep, right? Because this is taking place right before he woke up in the pages of the Avengers. So Hydra is involved through here, and then of course you've got the Winter Soldier going after his target, and how this agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., this operative Ran Shen, might be able to stop him. And all of those issues are collected in there. And then we get to the Rod Reyes artwork here from Kyle Higgins. And this story, I think, it is so underrated. I don't think enough people talk about it, but it's him kind of helping out other people that have been reprogrammed, not necessarily by the Russian government, but just everywhere. And there is a new Bucky that shows up through here. This is introducing us to this teenage assassin named RJ. Actually, he appears here in page number 2. And how the Winter Soldier, who used to be Bucky and used to be an assassin, deals with the character and what he ends up doing with RJ. And of course, other villains are involved through here. It's not just them. I think this is the one that not a lot of people talk about, but I think, at least for me, Kyle Higgins really writes a compelling story about Winter Soldier. He's no... I mean, at least there have been some great stories like from Image Comics that he's written that involve the whole spy and espionage. And then your variant covers all the way in the back here. And layouts, and then of course character designs. But that is what the saga of the Winter Soldier is. Hey now, it's that time of the video where we look at all the spines of the books coming out this week, and also a small reminder to hit that like button. Please, that goes a long way for us here on the channel. Small thing you can do, but it does mean the world to us. All right, let's continue with the overview. All right, another Saga book and another Thunderbolts book. This is the Saga of Yelena Belova. And here it is compared to the new printing of the Amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection Venom. But not as thick. This one has 376 pages. So let's actually look at this book here. And 376 pages retails for $39.99. And here's what's collected in here. So you have Black Widow from 1999, 1 through 3. Black Widow from 2001, 1 through 3. Widowmakers, Red Guardian, and Yelena Belova, which leads into Winter Guard 1 through 4. And then the Black Widow 2020 series by Kelly Thompson, 7 through 10. So you got Devin Grayson, you've got Greg Rucka, you've got Ryan Caddy, and I mentioned Kelly Thompson. But you also have the phenomenal artwork of J.G. Jones, Scott Hampton, Michelle Bendini, Jan Basaldua, and Elena Casagrande with Rafael de la Torre. And this, I think this has been collected in Epic Collection, but this is kind of an all-in-one type of place for you to get to know the character of Yelena. And that's what these books are. The Saga books are chosen stories by the editorial staff for people to get to know the characters better. And this one, it's not just focused on Yelena, who will become the White Widow, but also Natasha Romanoff. Now, the stories in here are a little bit different than what you're going to be seeing in the movies. The stories in here are, of course, the comic books, right? So it's a little bit different than what the movies are, especially the relationship between Yelena and Natasha. So in the first story arc, it's called The Itsy Bitsy Spider. It's Natasha just relaxing in New York City with her buddy Matt Murdock. So you're going to see some supporting cast in here. And then there's a call, and she's got to go and do a job. Now she's being followed by somebody, and that somebody is Yelena, who calls herself the Black Widow. Which, of course, how could she be calling herself the Black Widow when Natasha's the Black Widow? So there's this whole mystery as to who sent this Black Widow for Natasha Black Widow. And it's a cool cat and mouse type of story, and I did not say that because there's a freaking mice right there. Now, the following series, The Breakdown, it's Yelena and Natasha again, but this time around, it's the Avengers that get involved, and they swap faces with Yelena and Natasha here for the Black Widow role, as Daredevil's trying to help out Natasha, because during this time, they are dating each other. And then, of course, a message comes through from Russia for another mission to take down the Black Widow. So that's what that storyline involves. Then we fast forward a few years and we get to the Winter Guard storyline. So in here, you do have the Red Guardian and Yelena Belova story. And again, that story leads into the Winter Guard ongoing series. By now, you do have Yelena Belova, not calling herself the Black Widow, but starting to become the White Widow, if you will. And you're introduced to the antagonist here, Justin Kask, and there's also Dr. Durst. And this sets up the events of what will happen next, where you have the Red Guardian and Yelena now being chased down by the Russian new Winter Guard. And the Winter Guard has characters like the Red Widow, it has Vanguard, it's got Ursa Major, Crimson Dynamo, characters you're probably familiar with, Darkstar, Vostok, but also newer characters too, like, oh my gosh, Perun, I think it's one of the characters through here. Yeah. But then, anyway, that is what is happening through these pages. I've done an actual overview. This has been released in a trade paperback a few years ago. And it is both of them being hunted down. They're cleaning. It's like Russia is just cleaning out their super spies. So the Red Guardian starts hunting down all these other characters. And he eventually becomes an enemy of the country. And of course, dragging Yelena along with him. This has wonderful artwork. But speaking of wonderful artwork, if you have not read Kelly Thompson's run on Black Widow, oh my gosh. These issues that are going to be collected in here will make you buy those trade paperbacks. Who knows? Maybe one day we can get an oversized hardcover collection, because Casa Grande's artwork through here is just immaculate. Is that too blasphemous of a word to describe the stories in here? But anyway, this is the team up where we have a new status quo for for Black Widow, and White Widow comes in to help her out. And I don't want to reveal what the new status quo is, because it's a huge thing that changes in Natasha's life. But let's look at the extras in the back. So you do have variant covers here by J.G. Jones, the Widowmakers variants, and Winter Guard variants, and Black Widow variants. Now, the book, again, has 376 pages and retails for $39.99. X-Men Age of Apocalypse, Volume 1, Alpha. Now, this is not an epic collection. It's not a saga book. It's not a complete collection. It is a reprint of a trade paperback that came out a few years ago. That there were a series of 3. It was X-Men, Age of Apocalypse, Alpha, Reign, and Omega. Really surprised they did not change this to an event epic, because we know we have Annihilation coming out as the very first event epic, and I'm surprised that they didn't do the same thing with the X-Men Age of Apocalypse. But maybe one day they will. Oh, this is Reign, yeah. And that one's being reprinted as well as Omega. And in here, you're going to find Uncanny X-Men 320 to 321, Adjectiveless X-Men 40 and 41, Cable number 20, X-Men Alpha, Generation Next number 1, Astonishing X-Men 1, Cable and the Externals 1, Weapon X1, Factor X1, Excalibur 1, or Excalibur 1, however you want to say it, Amazing X-Men 1, X-Men Age of Apocalypse, the Ashcan Edition, 408 pages, $34.99. So, spoilers if you don't know how the Age of Apocalypse even begins, but alright, here we go. Age of Apocalypse begins with David Haller, the son of Professor Xavier, trying to do something right, trying to go back in time and kill Magneto, because he thinks his father's problems are all because of what Magneto has been doing. So he's like, you know what, I'm going to go back to the past and relieve my father from this mess, and I'm going to go and kill Magneto. Now I want you to take note of something. This is Roger Cruz drawing Uncanny X-Men right here. Roger Cruz, okay? I'm going to take note of this. Has a very Jim Lee style. As a matter of fact, you'll see some posters, like very Jim Lee-ish posters that you may have seen before in the pages of Adjectiveless X-Men. But anyway, we'll come back to that in a little bit. Now, David Haller, Legion, goes back in time, and some of the X-Men, including Bishop, go back to try to stop him. Meanwhile, in the Shi'ar Empire, Jaff gets worried that the crystal, this M'Kraan crystal, is going to expand, and it's going to destroy not just the Shi'ar homeworld, but the entire universe and life as we know it. So we have the present, where the M'Kraan crystal is coming, and we have the past, where Legion is back there and trying to kill Magneto, and of course, helping his dad out. Now, some of the X-Men that know about time travel, like Cable and Bishop, go on a mission, right? Like they go to the past. So it's Bishop, Storm, Iceman, and the character of Psylocke. Oh man, there's so many things that lead up to the Age of Apocalypse that leave on a cliffhanger, and you're like, what's gonna happen? Anyway, Encron Crystal is coming. Why? Because something has been changed in the past. Through Legion Quest, you find out that something is him going to kill Magneto. Unfortunately, I love this ad right here, by the way. The end because there was never a beginning. What a freaking epic, like, so epic ad. So what ends up happening is that he doesn't kill Magneto. As a matter of fact, look at Apocalypse getting ready for his age. He ends up killing his own father, Professor X. That leads to no X-Men being found. So that it leads into the Encron Crystal destroying our universe, our reality, with all these cliffhangers, including one that never really gets resolved there with Adam X, the Extreme, fighting Eric the Red, and creating a new reality, creating a new world. So it is a different universe where the entire planet and the entire galaxies have been reimagined, and that's what the Age of Apocalypse is, and that's where we kick it off with X-Men Alpha. Now, when I got this, I thought, oh wow, Joe Matt is doing the Uncanny X-Men issues, and he's doing, Astonishing X-Men issues, and he's doing the Alpha issue? It's crazy. Then I noticed, like, well, some of his art's a little bit off, but no, it's Roger Cruz. So remember that Jim Lee style of art that he was doing in this issue right here, for example? Well, he changed it to the Joe Matt art style here, and I will never forget that. I was like, that is so crazy. Yeah. And oh man, I'm sure there were some inner turmoil between Joe Matt and Roger Cruz. But anyway, this is the Alpha issue. This is the one that introduces us to this world where humans are being hunted down by mutants, and mutants are the ones that are the top of the food chain, if you will. You have this man in this hood that is walking on the earth, and he's got his own narration talking about how long he's been walking around, and you see names, familiar names, but just looking different. Like this is Eunice the Untouchable. And then you have the X-Men. Again, familiar names, just looking different. You got Sabretooth. You've got Wildchild. You've got Nightcrawler, Iceman, Quicksilver, Storm, Morph. Who's Morph? Well, if you haven't read this, you can find out who Morph is. He's not really based... Well, no, I guess he is. This version is kind of a little bit based on the cartoon. You've got Rogue. And of course, being led by her husband, Magneto. What? So relationships are different. And you have them fighting for the humans, because they believe in doing the right thing. And you've got Apocalypse that has his 4 horsemen out here. And one by one, you'll get to meet the 4 horsemen. You'll see characters like Nanny show up, like villains, right? And they've been reimagined to be good guys. Mr. Sinister, Abyss, and this guy known as Holocaust are 3 of those horsemen of Apocalypse. But who is the 4th? So, what it is happening is that Magneto finds out through Bishop that this isn't the world that it was supposed to exist. That the Encron is also going to destroy this world. So he sets off the X-Men and the other X groups on different missions. So you have Generation Next here. Again, this is Generation X, who just started, by the way. It was 4 issues in before they changed it to Generation Next. And then you have the Astonishing X-Men. So Uncanny X-Men became Astonishing X-Men. And they all have their own missions to go on to try to save their reality. Gambit in the Externals introducing us to characters like Sunfire and Strong Guy and Lila Cheney and of course Jubilee. Oh my gosh, I fell in love with Tony Danielle's artwork through here. I know people probably love his art now, especially in the pages of Batman or Spawn, but I love when Kevin Conrad inked Tony Danielle's artwork. His pencils are just absolutely beautiful. You have Wolverine, now known as Weapon X, hanging out with this young lady named Jean Grey. You have the Summers brother, who both of them are working for Sinister, who again works for Apocalypse. And they're not the only siblings. You're going to see the Guthrie family through here and a couple of other siblings that you may not have been introduced to in the 616 universe. And that is the pages of Factor X. Cable has been reimagined to a young man named Nate Gray, calling himself the X-Man. And that leads into an ongoing series. But how can it be an ongoing series if this world ends eventually? Then you've got Excalibur. This is the story, really, of Mystique and Nightcrawler. teaming up with a couple of other characters like Destiny, and then Amazing X-Men, who has characters like Dazzler and Storm and Sunfire and Banshee and Quicksilver. Again, each of them going on their own missions to try to keep this reality from being destroyed. And all the way in the back, you do have some extras. This is the ash can right here telling you what each of the issues will be, or each of the ongoing series will become. For example, X-Force never formed, but in their place was formed Gambit and the Externals. Same thing with X Factor and Factor X, Generation X. Man, I was so hyped up for this series. At one time, I'm sure a lot of people know this, but Amazing X-Men was supposed to be the Amazing Mutants, and Astonishing X-Men was supposed to be... No, it was supposed to be the Mutants and the Uncanny Mutants. They wanted to go back to the idea that Stan Lee had of just calling the X-Men mutants. These are the house ads. And then original artwork here. And then the ads for the other two books for the whole set. 408 pages, $34.99. Last but certainly not least is the Miles Morales Spider-Man Modern Era Epic Collection Volume 1. Hero in Training. From 2011 to 2012. Now, if you have been reading Ultimate Spider-Man, or if you're waiting for the Ultimate Spider-Man Epic Collection Volume 1, which I believe this one comes out next week, if I'm not mistaken. It is interesting that this is Ultimate Spider-Man, and it's an Ultimate Epic Collection. This one is a Modern Era Epic Collection. Now, of course, that could be because where this character ends up. Spoilers for what happens towards the end of this run, because there is no way to talk about this without talking about, not everything here, of course, just what happens to these characters. All right. Let's go ahead and open it up. Again, we saw what the spine looked like already, and then the back of the book. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, set in the Ultimate Universe. That's where this takes place. So collected in here is Ultimate Comics Spider-Man 1 through 12, Spider-Man 1 through 5, and then material from Ultimate Fallout number 4. The book has 400 pages and retails for $44.99. We are introduced to the character of Miles Morales, but also his family, and how a spider was stolen by this guy named the Prowler. Now, the Prowler, of course, turns out to be none other than Miles Morales' uncle, Uncle Aaron. And what happened to that spider that he accidentally took? Well, it comes out and it bites Miles Morales. And hence, Miles Morales gets these powers very similar to that of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, but also a uniqueness to what he can do that Spider-Man can't, or Ultimate Spider-Man couldn't. Now, it is very important to note that the stories happening at the very beginning are mapped perfectly, because this will lead into this big fight that's going to happen between Peter Parker and his arch nemesis, and how eventually Peter Parker will end up dying. And this kid will take up the cowl, the mantle, if you will, of Ultimate Spider-Man, because the world needs a superhero. If Spider-Man is dead and he has very similar powers, then he has to do it, right? With great power comes great responsibility. We get to meet his supporting cast, his mom and dad. I actually love his mom and dad. And Genki right here is best friends. We'll see him fight some classic Ultimate Spider-Man, so ultimate versions of these villains. But then, yeah, you get to see it through his eyes, the big fight between Peter Parker and his arch nemesis, and how he ends up dying. Now, I've gone through a lot of books. There are 3 X titles, including a classic X-Men Age of Apocalypse. How in the hell have I not given the seal of approval to any book yet? Because I was waiting for this. This book is getting my seal of approval for this week. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know, hell, I call myself the Uncanny Omar. I love X-Men. But there was just something really special about this book. We did an old reader, new reader years ago, and I read the omnibus in one sitting, so this has been available in omnibus format, in Ultimate Collections, and it's also in trade paperbacks, and now in an Epic Collection. But there was just something special about this character I really liked. I really liked his family, his supporting cast, the relationship, and the the drama here between him and his uncle. Now, of course, at the very beginning, he's starting to learn his powers, and it's a little bit slow paced, but I kind of dug that, right? It was the same pacing that Ultimate Spider-Man had. We don't even see him in his costume until Spider-Woman shows up. He wears like this costume from a costume shop, and he's like, that's in poor taste. Maybe I shouldn't be wearing that. He's confronted by the family members of Peter Parker, and he's like, yeah, I don't know if I should be wearing this costume. So this is the part from Ultimate Fallout right here. And then, of course, Spider-Woman from S.H.I.E.L.D. is the one that actually gives him the costume. So Nick Fury and those guys approve as long as he follows some guidelines. So that's where he ends up getting that Ultimate Spider-Man costume from. And you'll see a confrontation between him and his uncle, the Prowler, right? Like, what's going on? The Prowler's a villain. And he finds out exactly how much of a villain he is. You see a confrontation between him and the police. And his dad is part of the police force, so how's that going to work out? A lot of drama, teenage stuff. You'll see him fighting, villains from the Ultimate Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery. But then you'll see him fight some of his own villains through here. And I don't know, there was just something special about this. And I loved it. I loved Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales. I wasn't a fan of the Ultimate Universe, but this character was just so different. I dug it. And eventually he becomes so popular, well, something later on happens that didn't happen to a lot of the Ultimate Universe characters. Now, I don't want to spoil what happens in the aftermath or in the confrontation between him and his uncle. Something big happens. Now, the 5-issue miniseries here, The Spider-Men, is a team-up with the 616 Peter Parker, where 616 Peter Parker, because of Mysterio and a couple of happenstance, if you will, gets transported to the Ultimate Universe, where he runs into that Spider-Man and finds out, wait a second, where's Peter Parker of this universe? And, of course, Gwen Stacy still alive in this universe? What could that mean? So there's a team up between both of them, fighting Ultimate characters, and it's just, it's great. There was a follow-up to that, too. And this is issue number 5, so let's go ahead and skip all the way to the back to look at the extras. So back here, we have the variant covers, which there weren't a lot of, but they're all back here. And again, the book has 400 pages and retails for $39.99. Or no, actually, no, this one's apologies. This one's $44.99. The variant covers and Modern Era Epic Collection. That was the Black Widow book I was talking about. By the way, beautiful artwork here from David Marquez, but also Sarah Pichelli. Sarah Pichelli has wonderful artwork here towards the very beginning. But yeah, this Bendis book gets my pick of the week. If you haven't read it, you are in for a special treat. And that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these books. In the comments down below, let me know which ones you are picking up, which ones you have been looking forward to start reading, because you skipped out on the single issues and now you're waiting on the collected editions. And of course, which ones you would love to see in an oversized format, whether it's oversized hardcover or an omnibus. But that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button on the way out. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.